Scotland has made the news this summer. For 2 glorious days in August, the West Highland Extension witnessed the spectacle of 2 apple-green locomotives working in tandem. The combination of brilliant sunshine and boiler-first operation out of Mallaig opened up a new range of photographic opportunities. This is Steam Video, issue 16, the video magazine for the steam enthusiast. In this issue, news with the usual wide-ranging roundup, including Blue Peter's long-awaited return to Aberdeen. Richard Greenwood filmed extensively in the Northwest in the 1960s. We sample a rare insight of steam operating in its traditional heartland. The summer has seen some remarkable steam events north of the border, marking the centenary of the West Highland Extension. The K1 and K4 are shown teamed in the Highlands in glorious weather. Crossing the Alps from Alresford to Alton, we take a look at this railway, its stations, rolling stock and history. A less glamorous design of the steam scene, the 264 and 262 tanks. Plus, Showcase, with a compilation from our expert team of cameramen. Scotland's east coast has long been the spiritual home of 60532 Blue Peter. For the first time in 28 years, the line was to witness the return of the A2. This was a rerun of the aborted trip of last October, when 60532 only made it as far north as Perth. On this occasion, the trip was to be free of problems. Although planned to start from Edinburgh and run via the Forth Bridge, a last-minute change meant the special started from Stirling. This avoided the section where the loco had stalled on its attempt last year. Meanwhile, another East Coast Pacific was to perform at the opposite end of the country on very different metals. Flying Scotsman continued its tour of preserved lines by moving from the Nene Valley to Swanage for a 2-month stay. 60103 started operation on the 3-mile line on the 16th of July and finished 2 months later on the 18th of September. The railway was to make maximum use of the attractions of this famous Pacific. It was to haul 7 return workings each day. We now join the crew on the footplate on a midday run on Sunday the 21st of August on the 10:30 a.m. departure from Swanage. In fact, 60103 was to prove popular with the crews, and its running on the line was entirely trouble-free. In addition, its coal consumption was remarkably good. The present terminus of the line is Harmon's Cross. However, that will all change in Easter next year when services run through Corfe Castle to Norden. By that time, signalling will be commissioned at this loop, allowing 2-train operation. 60103's next port of call will be the Severn Valley for an appearance at the railway's Autumn Steam Gala. On another private railway, Pacifics were again to make the news. The Great Central was to see 46229 Duchess of Hamilton operated alongside 4498 Sir Nigel Bresley for a 9-day tour of the railway during August. Like the A4, the Duchess was to prove a major attraction and served to boost ticket sales. This was, in fact, 46229's first ever operation on an independent railway. This was one of 3 Pacifics in action on the railway during the summer. Along with 4498 and 35005, they represented designs from 3 of the big 4 companies. The loco's spell on the Great Central will serve to provide around 700 miles of running in, following a series of recent repairs. In fact, the Duchess last saw mainline running in September 1993, when melted axle bearings forced its withdrawal. .34027 is continuing its tour of private railways. Next port of call after the Llangollen was to be the North York Moors Railway. BR Standard Class 4, number 75014, has entered traffic on the North York Moors Railway after a restoration programme lasting 13.5 years. This ex-Barry locomotive is now in regular service on the railway. On this occasion, it's working a private charter. £70,000 Britannia made a first-ever appearance by the class on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, making unannounced runs on the 24th of July and the 7th of August. The Brit had been working south en route for Didcot, but was effectively marooned by a steam ban due to the fire risk due to the dry summer. This short-lived appearance was captured on VHS video. A unique period of steam and diesel double-heading was operated by the Peak Railway during its August Bank Holiday Gala. In preparation for the event, some trial runs were made on the 17th of August. Such operation, although rare on the preserved lines, was a common feature of the later years of steam. Incidentally, this combination with steam leading was rare due to the possibility of hot ash causing a fire hazard on the following diesel. It's been a long, hot summer on the Norfolk coast. The delightful 5-mile North Norfolk Railway has made the news this summer with the operation of 2 visiting locomotives. On loan from the Great Central Railway was Great Western 5205 class, brought in at the last moment for the railway's late summer season. Also on loan from the Great Central Railway was N2 number 69523, fresh from overhaul. The 062 is due to spend 2 months on this 5-mile line. Sadly, the B12, currently in the final stages of restoration in East Germany, was unable to make the railway's late summer gala. The former Midland half cab number 41708 was one of 4 engines in steam at the Dean Forest Railway steam weekend of the 13th and 14th of August. This was to be the half cab's final weekend of operation on the railway and was renumbered as LMS number 1720 for the occasion. Also in traffic was the railway's newly overhauled Prairie number 5541. Next port of call for the half cab was the Avon Valley Railway, where it worked with 2 other locomotives on hire for the season. This was the occasion of the Avon Valley Railway's gala of the 4th of September 1994. 41708 was teamed with the LMS 3F on hire from the Severn Valley Railway. (47383) is one of a class which was used for shunting and pilot duties, and examples were regular visitors to this line. Also in action was an ex-Darfield colliery locomotive named, aptly enough, Darfield. Number 1 was to work 2 demonstration freights during the day and is approaching the line's terminus at Oldham Common. Darfield is on hire from the Llangollen Railway until the end of the year. Bradley Manor has been sent to the West Somerset as a replacement for failed Standard 4 75069. 7802 is on loan from the Severn Valley Railway and is expected to work on the line until the 20th of September. (7802) approaches the newly installed passing loop at Crocombe. The date is the 29th of August. The loop has increased line capacity on the railway, serving to split the 10-mile section from Bishop's Lydeard to Williton. The Bodmin and Wenford Railway's annual gala over the weekend of the 10th and 11th of September saw 5 engines in steam. Pannier Tank 7752 is on loan from Tyseley for the season. The Wenford clay train was recreated using 3 of the line's 4 clay hood wagons. These date from 1955 and entered preservation in 1988. On permanent loan from English China Clays is Alfred, a Bagnall 040 saddle tank. This curious design is only steamed during special events. Passenger services to Bodmin Parkway were hauled by Hunslet 060 saddle tank Swift Shore, teamed with 7597, a side tank in industrial service until 1971. The 35028 Clan line has recently completed 3 years of overhaul. September saw the Merchant Navy complete a test run from Eastleigh to Yeovil Junction and return. A familiar sight at Yeovil as the Bullid was turned. The locomotive is scheduled to undertake its first public run on the 24th of September on a special from Victoria to Portsmouth. King Edward I has continued to be active on the main line. Earlier September saw the King in action on the Bristolian, taking an unusual route from Didcot to Gloucester, then south to Bristol and back the same way. On this occasion, 6024 had been renumbered 6026. It was running 1 hour late by the time Bristol was reached. .6024 has a busy schedule of running ahead of it prior to the expiry of its mainline certificate. Another active Western performer has been 5029 Nunney Castle. Mid-August saw the locomotive on the Cotswold Venturer, running the circuit from Didcot to Worcester, Oxford and back to Didcot. Another performer on the Cotswold circuit has been 70,000 Britannia. The Brit passes the classic former Great Western Junction at Kemble on the outward journey. .46229, Duchess of Hamilton, made its first main line run on the 28th of August, following a period of running in on the Great Central Railway. The York to Scarborough run was operated by the Friends of the National Railway Museum. .71,000 Duke of Gloucester was to continue its active period of mainline work into August, working southbound over the Settle and Carlisle on the 7th. Later in the month, the Duke was to fail with boiler problems, the loco being sent to the East Lancs Railway for retubing. It's expected to remain out of action until the new year. 71,000 was replaced by Princess Margaret Rose, which was destined to become a regular performer on the Settle and Carlisle. On the 20th of August, the route saw two steam specials. First came 46203 on a southbound Cumbrian Mountain Express. On the same day, Jubilee Bahamas was to haul an out-and-back special from Bradford to Carlisle, operated by the Bahamas Locomotive Society. 3 workings over the Settle and Carlisle in one day is a record in the preservation era. Bahamas was booked for more action on the Settle and Carlisle. Sadly, the loco derailed on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, and 46203 was called in for a southbound Cumbrian Mountain Express. By now a regular sight on the route, 46203 was again called in for yet another southbound working a few days later. Richard Greenwood filmed extensively in the Northwest in the 1960s. Rochdale was his hometown, and he covered the station and surrounding area in considerable detail. This former Lancashire and Yorkshire route across the Pennines was busy with a variety of traffic. An IVAT 260 is being run in after overhaul at Horwich Works. The train of empties is bound for Healy Mills Yard. The date is the 18th of April, 1964. A few minutes later, a Caprotti Class 5, number 44756, departs Platform 8 on the 12:33 Saturdays Only Express from Rochdale to Southport. And now a rare visitor from across the Pennines. This B16 is working a Burscough junction to Normanton Parcels. This train changed engines at Rochdale. 61454 is moving light engine through Clegg Hall after being replaced in the station. Same engine prepares to take up a return working. Another B16 passes Clegg Hall. We are now at New Barn Lane between Rochdale and Castleton. By 1964, Fowler 060s had been replaced by standard and IVAT 260s on the local train. This is a Wigan to Rochdale service. WDs were rarely photographed. These examples are captured at Castleton East Junction. Both trains are using the line to Bolton via Berry Knowsley Street. This is now the route of the East Lancs Railway's Haywood extension. For our final sequence, we return to New Barn Lane and a 76084 hauling an engineer's saloon. The variety of workings and steam power seem incredible when compared to today's standardized railway. The road to the Isles has become a legend among steam routes. The depot here at Fort William, in the shadow of Ben Nevis, is celebrating its first decade of preserved operations. August '94 has seen no less than 3 locomotives based here. These included K1 number 2005, together with K4 number 3442, the Great Marquis. We'll now take a look at the summer's operations in the shadow of the mountains. It all started in the spring of 1984, when steam returned to the West Highland extension. The 1891-built North British 060 Maud was the first performer over the scenic 42-mile route. The same year saw Black 5, 5407, working through to Mallaig. The scene is dated by the rake of blue and grey Mark I stock. Over the coming years, such running was to become a regular one in the steam calendar. By 1987, operations were extended over the West Highland Main Line to Glasgow with a series of autumn runs. 7 years later came another event. Not only was it the centenary of the West Highland Line, it was also the 10th year of steam operations over the West Highland extension to Mallaig. To mark the event, an extensive programme of steam running was announced. First came a southbound run from Fort William over the West Highland Main Line behind K1 2005 on the 31st of July. The K1 leaves Fort William. By early August, settled weather had descended. The omens were good for the coming programme. The highlight was undoubtedly the first northbound steam working over the West Highland Main Line for 30 years. However, all did not go according to plan. An amazing 3.5 hours late, the K1 and K4 started the long 1 in 66 climb out of Bridge of Orkney through Rannoch Moor. A combination of problems with the radio signalling and station delays had put the train well behind schedule. The option of turning the train at Rannoch was considered, but rejected, since many passengers had Fort William as their destination. Eventually, Rannoch was passed, and the duo reached the summit at Corrour. The train was greeted by vast clouds of biting insects, making life hell for the band of photographers still by the line side. Despite the delays, the pair had made it to their destination. Last-minute difficulties concerned with crewing were overcome, and preparations were made for the 2 days of double heading. The first ever northbound run and lack of turning facilities at Fort William had led to the engines facing boiler first from Mallaig, the first time this had happened since steam running recommenced in 1984. The climb to Arisaig was an irresistible prospect, with locos facing the right way for the grade. We are at the start of the climb at Kinloyd. The pair are tackling the first part of the grade at 1 in 90. The grade steepens to 1 in 50, while a series of steep curves make the approach to the summit all the more difficult. The 11th of August was the date for the official centenary celebrations. A special train was diesel hauled from Glasgow to Fort William. VIP guests were then transferred by road to Fort William Shed, where the Great Marquis conveyed them the 1 mile into the station. This was a substitute of the original plans for a return double-headed steam run to Glasgow. Crowds, national media and officials were waiting. "3442 passed under a triumphal arch constructed the previous evening from plywood. The settled weather and variety of motive power have made this a year to remember in the West Highlands. We'll now sample some views from the Mallaig line. The short tunnel on the western approach to the summit at Glenfinnan offered some fine views only possible with the engines facing out of Mallaig. Now the pier at Corpatch, alongside Loch Linney. Finally, the long level section alongside the lock. Before 1984, the Mallaig line had received little attention from enthusiasts. 10 years later, it's one of the highlights of the steam calendar and a major tourist attraction north of the border.
This may appear to be just gentle, rolling Hampshire countryside. But to the crew on a Bullitt Pacific, this is a hard slog. This is the 1:60 climb from Ropley to the summit of the Mid-Hants line at Medstead. To the local engine crews, this country byway was known as the Alps. The summit, 635 feet. The approaches, steep gradients in each direction, both from Alresford and from Alton. In 1865, the Mid-Hants Railway Company opened a connecting line between the London South Western Railway branch at Alton and the same company's main line at Winchester. From the outset, the London South Western Railway operated the line, and in 1884 they bought out the Mid-Hants Company. And so the line faithfully served this small community until it was found by Beeching and joined many other rural byways and became axed. As a preserved line, the Mid-Hants Railway recommenced operation in 1977, with services initially between Alresford and Ropley. In 1983, the services extended through to Medstead and Four Marks, and in 1985, Alton was reached once again. Here we are at Alton, where the Mid-Hants returned in 1985. Now, they operate from what was the old BR Platform 3, which is now their platform. The 34105 Light Pacific Group's West Country Pacific Swanage arrived at the Mid-Hants in 1978 for restoration and re-entered service in August 1987. In Southern Railway days, the line used to be double-tracked for about a mile to Butts Junction, where the Meon Valley line headed south to Fareham and the Alton and Basingstoke line headed north. Now it is single-track across the Alps to Alresford. Currently, the single-track section from Alton to the first station at Medstead and Four Marks is operated as a long siding from Medstead. Medstead opened 3 years after the rest of the stations of the line and was built to an entirely different design, very small station, with no awning, and the station master's house was a separate building. For this remembrance year, June 1944 has been recreated at Medstead and Four Marks. Ropley is one of the original stations on the line and has been recreated by the Mid-Hants into London and South Western Railway condition, as can be seen by the attractive colouring of the station buildings and the signalling. The footbridge, that's new. When the line was open, the traffic inspector was quite happy for footpaths on all the stations. The headquarters of the line is here at Alresford, which is where most people begin and end their journeys to the Mid-Hants Railway. Alresford is being redeveloped in a typical Southern Railway image, complete with new totems recently installed by friends of the line. The signalling is Southern Railway practice, and most of the features of the line are original. Ropley is the main motive power depot for the Mid-Hants Railway. In the yard at the moment, in addition to the S160 in steam, Swanage is being prepared for a service. This Pacific was built at Brighton Works in 1950. Another of the line's regular performers is the Uri S15 30506, London South Western Railway design, built in 1920. Came out of Di Woodham's yard in Barry in March 1973 and came here to the Mid-Hants. A long rebuilding, and her first steaming wasn't until June 1987, and she came into service in July that year. A gleaming 73096 now represents 73080 Merlin, a celebrated southern region named 460. When restoration was completed in October last year, the Class 5 was outshopped with its original BR number. Another BR standard is the Class 4 Mogul 76017, which spent its BR life based at Eastleigh until 1960, when it moved to Salisbury, and there it stayed until withdrawal in July 1965. Soon after the line opened, it was obvious that big engines were needed to work the trains over the steep grades of the Mid-Hants. The problem was it was taking 8–10 years to resurrect an engine coming out of Barry. The solution was to go overseas. This, the American-built S160, was one of 2,000 US Army Transportation Corps locomotives built for service in the Second World War. While they might seem to be foreigners, in fact the class of locomotive did serve in Hampshire, feeding military trains down into Southampton docks. This particular engine went straight to Italy. From Italy she went to Greece, and then from Greece she was rescued and brought back to the Mid-Hants. But instead of a number of years before it was back in service, she was back in service within a matter of months. After many years as the flagship of the line, the West Country Pacific Bodmin is now in Ropley Works for a well-earned heavy overhaul. The Bullet Pacific was built in Brighton in 1945, rebuilt in 1958 and finally withdrawn in 1964. She was pulled out of Barry in 1972 and first went to Quainton, but then moving on to the Watercress, where after 30,000 man-hours of work it entered into service in 1979. The Watercress has established a tradition of hosting special events which attract visiting locomotives. This 1950s cameo was recreated during the February 1993 gala when Britannia appeared as 70004 William Shakespeare, complete with 73A Stuart's Lane shed code. Leading the Class 4, the Swanage Railway's 30053 recalls the days when the line's push-pull passenger services were largely in the hands of the capable M7s. A BR Standards Day was held on the 30th and 31st of October, which included 76017, double-heading David Shepherd's 9F, 92203, Black Prince, a visitor from the East Somerset Railway. The Mid-Hants Railway, 20 years after closure, the route across the Alps is once again thriving and reliving the days of the southern region's secondary network.
Hardly the most glamorous of steam designs, the 264 and 262 tank was once a common aspect of the steam scene, performing on a wide range of traffic. We'll now take a selected look at some surviving LMS and standard designs. Two Fairburn 264 tanks survived into preservation, and both are based on the Lakeside and Haverthwaite Railway. The 42085 has recently returned to traffic after a lengthy and troublesome overhaul. Sister engine 42073 is seen in action during the railway's opening. This rare occasion saw both examples working side by side. 73 was painted in Caledonian livery and is still under restoration on the railway. Eventually it will join 42085 in full working order. This was the occasion of the line's opening on the 2nd of May 1973. Four IVAT 262 tanks survived into preservation, but sadly none are now in working order. Only one 41241 has worked in preservation. It's based on the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway. This rare film was taken in 1969. An amazing 15 Standard 4 tanks have survived. Of these, 2 are currently passed for mainline operation. 80079 and 80080 have had a busy season, appearing in the West Country in May. This was the occasion of the Standard's trip to Exeter. They've become common and popular performers on recent specials. Only one other, 80135, is currently in traffic on the private network. This example is based on the North York Moors Railway. 2 others, 80002 and 80064, have worked in preservation but are currently out of traffic awaiting repairs. The coming years will see more return to traffic on the preserved lines, a task for which they are well suited. In a shortened showcase, we start with an unusual mix of sun and rain on the Bodmin and Wentford's Gala of early September. Even with double heading, the 1 in 40 grade from Bodmin Parkway Station is a formidable challenge. We make no apology for returning to the Scottish Highlands for our final sequences. One of the highlights of the summer has been the double heading of the apple green moguls on the West Highland extension. The combination of ideal conditions and superb scenery was unbeatable. The K1 and K4 are seen from the opposite bank of Loch Lilly. With the locos facing Boiler First from Mallaig, some new photographic vantage points became available. This view at Glenfinnan characterises the summer of Scottish steam.